Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is Tennessee State University, and we're fortunate to have with us the president of Tennessee State University. And of course, Dr. Glover, let me welcome you to the show this morning, and to remind our audience that your name is Dr. Glender Glover, the president of Tennessee State University, and we might say that you've been a very, very active president at Tennessee State University, and some of our audience have asked for you on many times since you've been here, and we're just glad to have you here now, and so that they'll know that we made an attempt to bring Dr. Glenda Glover to our television show, and she simply represents the latest of all of the presidents that our audience has had an opportunity to meet on this particular show, and so we're just glad to have you here. Dr. Glover, before we start, let's see if we can give our audience some background information of your background, your education, and some of your experiences before you got to Tennessee State University, and then after that we'll have a break, and then we'll come back and deal with some other aspects.
Certainly. Thank you very much. It's an honor to have a conversation with you. I always enjoy speaking about Tennessee State University. It has become my favorite subject in the last 2 years. My background, I was born and reared in Memphis, attended public schools in Memphis, Tennessee State undergraduate, finished in 1974. It's just a real honor and a real blessing to come back to the very grounds, the foundation that gave me my start, to now come back in such a wonderful leadership position. It's just an awesome, awesome experience. But on the way to Tennessee State, of course, I went back and got a master's degree from Clark Atlanta, a doctorate from George Washington, and a law degree from Georgetown. And my background also is an accountant. As a professional, I'm an accountant by profession, CPA. And so we need all of those skills into one to come back now to TSU as the president.
And thinking in terms, Dr. Glover, of coming to Tennessee State University and your first experience coming as a student to Tennessee State University, what did you know about Tennessee State University before you arrived here? And certainly not knowing that one day you would be the president of Tennessee State University, but what were some of your thoughts in terms of the opportunities that you felt that you might have had?
Well, as a student, math, I was a math major, and I wanted to be in the honors program, so I graduated with honors and just had a lot of experiences with the honors students and the types of opportunities that a school like TSU offered. I spoke with various companies. I never thought about teaching really, because I was so interested in going into the corporate world. Higher education came later on in my career, but most of my experiences were public speaking, dancing, doing things that students do on campus, being involved with the panel and the council, those types of activities.
So you arrived at Tennessee State University as a freshman student in what year? And give us an idea in terms of your impression about Tennessee State University.
Oh, I loved it at first sight. I got there, you know, students make decisions based on some form of academic programs. I wanted to major in math. It wasn't so much the math program, it was the individuals that I knew who had attended Tennessee State and had done so well in their careers and were influencing me. And it was excitement about having been a student at TSU, and they came back to my church and my community, and they talked it up. So I said, well, let me just go and see what they're talking about. And then my parents could not afford to send me out of state to somewhere else, so I had some limited options at that time. And I chose TSU because I saw what it offered, both educationally, socially, with the versatility that was there. I just enjoyed it all.
And so you landed at Tennessee State University as a freshman student in what year, Dr. Glover?
71.
Now, who was the president of Tennessee State University at that particular time?
Dr. Torrance.
Dr. Torrance?
Torrance, yes.
So what did you think about Dr. Torrance and the faculty that you met at Tennessee State University?
Well, the faculty was so caring and nourishing, I mean, nurturing. And Dr. Torrance was very accessible. He would sit and talk with students in the cafeteria. He was very, he was easy to speak with, and he was always around. He wanted to do something that may not have been so acceptable by the standards of the faculty. He was there. You look up and he was standing right there. So he was always there.
Very good. And so, Dr. Glover, we're going to take our first commercial break, and we're going to come back and deal with some other aspects of your journey at Tennessee State University. And we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Thank you, and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. We're talking to Dr. Glenda Glover, the president of Tennessee State University, and she's given us some information in reference to her background, education, and experiences. And now she will talk about coming to Tennessee State University. Some of the individuals that she met at Tennessee State University had influence upon her, and how she was able to achieve academically at the institution at a time when many people felt that these kinds of institutions were not doing what they ought to do. Talk about it from that perspective.
Well, from an HBCU perspective, the first thing I had to decide was, am I going to attend HBCU, yes or no? So I made that decision that I wanted to attend HBCU, Historically Black College, and then Tennessee State rose to the top of the list. And then coming here, I met so many wonderful individuals, the faculty, staff. Of course, I have five that always come to mind. Of course, two are deceased now, the two Gassaway sisters, Dr. Sadie Gassaway and Dr. Pearlie Gassaway. But the Williams, Dr. McDonald Williams and Jamie Williams.
They've both been in that seat.
Yes, they now live in Atlanta. And they were so tremendously influential in my life, in my career. I called them as I was doing my inaugural address. I called her and had her assist me with doing some research on it. So that I still talk to them quite frequently. In fact, their daughter-in-law is one of my close friends. And of course, Barbara Merle was there as, she was the vice president, the first vice president, female in the whole system, the TSU, the TBR, Tennessee Board of Regents system. So she's become, she was a close friend of mine too. So those were some of the folk who were influential while I was at TSU, and that who are still living and having fun, not about to do anything. They're not even sick at all. So those were some of the wonderful mentors that are very, very influential to me.
Have you thought about being the president of Tennessee State University now and sort of incorporating some of the things that you learned under their leadership in reference to dealing with faculty and staff and students now? Has that had any impression on you at all?
Well, the fairness aspects. You know, you pick up in the fairness and you want to make sure you operate with a strong sense of integrity at all times. Well, I noticed that there was an element of fairness about Dr. McDonald Williams in our honors programs classes, and he was no nonsense. You know, he was, so those are the kind of things, the strict love that, you know, some folk call it tough love, but there's a strictness that you apply as you love and mentor students. So I saw that then, and I see it now in many of the faculty that we have, which is a good thing. And it's very encouraging in terms of being able to replicate that kind of attitude that they had toward your students now. It is, and then you apply some of your own characteristics and traits that you've picked up, you know, in the business world. You know, being a CPA and being a lawyer and an educator, those three work so well together as you at the top leadership position, because you see things with a bigger picture in mind, and you're able to dissect mentally much quicker. So, and I find myself analyzing the smallest the smallest sentence that's brought to me when it comes to finances. So that is very important because, as you know, many of our universities are looking for additional funds. So we have to make sure you can quickly make decisions about how to best employ the funds that we have.
And you think that the very fact of you being an accountant as well as a lawyer helped to enhance your ability to be able to deal with some of the problems
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. As an auditor, I know that most problems are not so much from breaking the law or misappropriating or doing acting in an inappropriate manner, is not knowing the rules in the first place. I think the legal profession has made me learn how to read rules and laws more closely and understand them much better. And of course, the accounting profession, which is the language of business, so because it made me understand business and the business aspects of being a president.
And so all of those things really came together for you coming to Tennessee State University as the president of Tennessee State University. What did you think in terms of first being selected and then finally selected as president of the Tennessee State of the United States, that you might stand there. But what did you think in terms of when that happened to you?
It was so much excitement in my family because it was a process that took, I would say, about 2 or 3 months, going through the interviews and meeting various people and getting feedback from the campus, the students, the Board of Regents who ultimately made the selection and took the vote. So I was very pleased and honored to come back now and lead the university that gave me my start. I mean, there's no greater honor, no greater blessing than when God calls you back home.
And there you were at Tennessee State University, selected as the president of that great institution, now to move that institution forward. And you are moving the institution forward according to everything that we see in the newspaper and everywhere else. And when we come back, when we have our second commercial break, what we'd like for you to do is to think in terms of how you are moving the university. That is, some of the principles that you've laid down, and we might, I think in some instances, refer to them as challenges and opportunities, and recognizing that. And that's what we want to talk about. I think that I've heard you on many occasions lay out 5 or 6 points in terms of what you're trying to do in terms of enrollment and et cetera, et cetera. And so that's, I think that our audience would be really concerned in terms of hearing that kind of information and about how you are working hard in a real sense to make sure that students have an opportunities, even those students who somehow might not have been doing the things that they ought to do to have that opportunity, but there you are. Yeah, and I think that the community is aware of all of the things, and I want you to talk about that.
Thank you.
Because I think that plays a very, very significant role in terms of how you are able to deal with the university, as well as how you're able to deal with outside of the university, because I think that we've seen in the newspaper a lot of information in reference to who you are and about the not only the groundbreaking activities that you're involved in for historically black institutions, black females, and et cetera, and et cetera, and you are indeed a role model.
But thank you very
much. And so
I
want you to just jump into that when we come back and talk about your background, your challenges and some of your opportunities.
Certainly.
We'll do that in about 10 or 15 seconds, and then we'll be able to sort of tie this up for today. But I do want you to talk about some of the things that you talk about every day in terms of dealing with your faculty, staff, and the institution itself. And of course, we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Thank you and welcome back to the final segment of the show for today. We're talking to Dr. Glover, the president of Tennessee State University, and she's given us some information in reference to her background, education, and some of her experiences coming to Tennessee State University. And now she's going to talk about some of the challenges and some of the opportunities that she has in terms of meeting some of those challenges and opportunities. Dr. Glover, let's pick up where we left off before we head our second commercial break.
I was telling you how pleased and just appreciative I am to the Nashville community for being so receptive and so supportive of the endeavors of TSU. We put together a 5-point plan to increase our graduation rates for our students. That's our number one priority now, is to make sure that our students receive the support and the opportunity to graduate. Students have a right to graduate. So we are putting in procedures and implementing various activities to ensure retention, and so that students will have the opportunity to graduate. Because the new model now is not the number of students that you have. Of course, that's important because tuition revenue is always important, but the number of students who graduate, now funding is based on students who graduate. It's performance based now. So that's very, very important. And then we're looking also at fundraising and making partnership with the business community. We've made about 100 partnerships over the last year. And some have resulted in financial resources, some other resources. We have anonymous contributions that have come in. So we have really been hitting that ground running, beating the bushes to meet the corporate community, to partner with them, to show them that we have the students. Our partnership is based on students and the expertise of our faculty, and hopefully that you will respond with sponsorships and partnerships with us. So that's been a fun fun game for us for a year now.
And so that's quite a bit of activity that you've become involved in terms of fundraising. I think I heard you say at one time that you really almost have to support Tennessee State University from private money as well as state money, because you don't receive as much money, you think, as a matter of fact, none of our institutions, I think that has always been the charge, not charge, but one of the challenges that presidents have had to face.
Absolutely. Most people are surprised when they hear that we receive less than a third of our funding from the state of Tennessee. And the rest, because of tuition revenue, government grants, private funds, but we find a way to raise the funds to keep the school going. But it's largely tuition driven. So the base, the out-of-state fees, the in-state fees, all that makes for our entire budget.
Now, in terms of the kind of assistance that, because I've had a number of individuals on this show from Tennessee State University, and they've talked about the kind of assistance that they are able to receive through grants and some of the things that have happened dealing with the national administration in terms of opening up funds. Has Tennessee State University received any of those funds in reference to that? Well,
we write a lot of grants, and yes, to date, I would say we received almost $40 million in funding from the federal government, federal and state government, largely federal. And we spent a lot of time on the Hill in DC, talking to the various agencies, agriculture, treasury, health. We're talking to them, partnering with them to present the new programs that we have, the flagship programs, and the expertise of the faculty and staff, so that they will feel comfortable partnering with us and know that if they do bring us on as one of their partners, and they can sleep at night knowing that we'll get the job done.
I think one thing that is noticeable, that there are a number of buildings that are going up on the campus at Tennessee State University. Why don't you make some statements in reference to all of that activity that's happening in the agricultural area and some of those other buildings, that big, fine athletic facility that you've got there. Why don't you make some statements?
Yeah, we have a new, that was the athletics building, the indoor-outdoor facility, practice facility. We also we're going to have a ribbon cutting probably next month, probably April. This is still February, and the new agricultural building that was just finished. So that was funded by USDA. So we're really proud of that, and we're looking at some more buildings down the road. A new nursing building. This is as oddly enough, or thankfully enough, this is TSU's time on the funding cycle. It comes around every 9 or 10 years. So this is the year that TSU receives funding. So we're on the schedule this, probably end up being next year, but we're looking at a new nursing facility and perhaps another part of our education building to house a new STEM program, an education STEM program where we train teachers to teach students about math and science in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. So we're really excited about that.
That STEM program, I've heard a lot about that program and engineering and all these other activities, and the idea is to increase the number of graduates in these areas.
Yeah, we want to, the whole STEM initiative across the country is to increase the number of African American graduates in the sciences and technology, and engineering and math, because that number is woefully low. And with the added emphasis from the President Obama on down to the high schools, we're trying to emphasize the STEM areas to get the analytical thinking, the strategic thinking, the thought processes to help as we increase our national scores on exams. Tennessee recently was rated the most improved state in K through 12. So that was very, very impressive and very phenomenal for Tennessee, and we were pleased to quote that statistic everywhere. But we're looking at how can we as TSU help to improve the education status of our state and of course our country, because there's an educational crisis across the country, there's no secret. So we believe teaching STEM and math early, or training teachers on how to teach math and science very early, it's one of the ways to assist us, and then going to a common core curriculum where those standards will assist us in getting our students what they need as far as developing the types of the knowledge and the skill set, the basis they will need to know. So we're excited about some of the new paradigms that's coming about in education, K through 12, that will feed into higher education.
You know, there's one question that I always raise whenever we have a person from Tennessee State University, and that has to do with the lottery funds. Are you receiving any of that lottery money from the state?
Well,
I mean, from the lottery?
No, none to speak of.
You're not receiving enough of it, I would imagine.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we're receiving any of it. So, I mean, it's not enough to speak of and make a point about.
Very good. Well, I can certainly appreciate that. So in a real sense, you're sort of optimistic in terms of the possibilities that that you face in terms of bringing more resources.
Oh, it's unimaginable. We made so many partnerships, and we're talking to more companies by becoming engaged and understanding what TSU offers, and especially in the Nashville and Davidson County area, because TSU belongs to all of us. It belongs to Nashville, it belongs to the state of Tennessee, it belongs to you and me, it belongs to all of us. So we're selling TSU to the community, that we're no longer this university that's on a hill in North Nashville. We're out there meeting the needs of the business community. What the business community needs from Tennessee State is to be a fine academic partner and produce ready-to-employ graduates, and that's what we're striving to do.
And you've got a nationally known education program and engineering program and nursing program and et cetera, and so you're really ready to move forward.
And that's true. When people say, what is your flagship program? I have to brag and say they're all flagships. I mean, the engineering, health sciences, agriculture, business, liberal arts. There are so many flagships until it's difficult to say that you can single out one or two.
And so you're really excited, Dr. Glover.
I'm excited. The alumni. I'm so excited about the excitement that's around me. I'm going to visit many of the alumni chapters, and that excitement is rubbed off. I gave them a challenge to meet a $50,000 challenge, and some have already met that challenge. Others are striving hard to do it. They're having fundraisers because we're raising money through the Alumni Association.
And so you're really actively involved in terms of moving Tennessee State University forward in terms of trying to find the resources and bring the students in and serve a real a need for the state of Tennessee. Is that
that's the entire idea. That's exactly what we're trying to do. That's our ultimate goal.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
And of course, let me thank you for coming by and giving us that information. And let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning. Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is racial segregation, and we're fortunate to have with us to talk about racial segregation Alana McLaughlin. Alana will give us some information in reference to her background, education, and her experiences, and then we'll get into the topic of racial segregation. Alana, let's first of all have you to talk about some information in reference to you and your odyssey in reference to being on this television show. I think that this is several seasons for you, and you started out as an 8-year-old child, and now you old enough to come to me and say, let's talk about racial segregation. And I agreed with that primarily because you've done such an excellent job in terms of some of the other, quote, grown-up topics that we felt that you had to deal with, and the topics that you convinced me that you were capable of dealing with, and so I fell for that, and so I'm back again with you dealing with racial segregation. But before we get into racial segregation, Alana, let's talk about your background, your education, and some of your experiences, and then we'll start talking about the topic itself.
Well, for our new viewers, my name is Alana McLaughlin, born August 27th, 2002. I went to pre-K at Napier Elementary and multiple schools after that, and I currently go to John Early Museum Magnet Middle School, where I'm in 6th grade. Now, I'm very involved in church and other activities. Actually, this upcoming summer of 2014, I'm going to be attending the Junior National Young Leaders Conference in Washington, D.C. And if you're not familiar with the conference, it is basically where children all around America come together for a 1 week in Washington, D.C., which is parents free, where you experience Washington as a living classroom instead of being just a tourist or a resident of Washington. And so I'm very excited for that. And I'm also heavily involved in my school, church, and any activity I can really get into. Like at school, I'm on our debate team, the student council, everything I can get into, really. I was previously on our STEP team, and I hope to be a cheerleader next year when I get into 7th grade. And in church, I'm on a lot of committees: the United Methodist Women's Committee, the Acolyte Committee, the Usher Committee. I try to help it when I can, because I just feel like that's my duty on earth.
Very good. And of course, London, you've been involved with a lot of things. But now let's look at the topic that you're dealing with today, racial segregation. Now, what would you say about that? How would you approach that topic?
Racial segregation. When the average person would hear that, they would think, the 1900s, Martin Luther King marching, MLK, Malcolm X type thing. But then racial segregation was more than just, the Jim Crow era, or just African Americans in segregated buses or sit-ins or anything. But it was way more than that. It expanded from just African Americans, Europeans, Ukrainians, Germans, Italians, because almost every race has experienced racial segregation. Now, going as far back in African American culture, you would think slavery. African Americans were enslaved and made to work and beaten if they did something wrong, or just beaten for their slave owners' amusement. And so that's as far back as I can previously think of for African Americans. But then for Europeans and Ukrainians and Germans, the Holocaust, or in the 14th and 15th century, Europeans were segregated just like African Americans were in the 19th era. And so basically, racial segregation just expands from just African Americans to just a lot of other places, like mulattoes and Europeans and just all races, really, because at least almost all races have experienced some type of racial segregation.
Very good. And so it's really general in terms of, and is that why you wanted to talk about racial separation and segregation, not only in the United States, but racial separation and segregation all over the world, because you believe it's general and it's a problem everywhere you find it? Because
not a lot of people really know that. Like, so I could hear somebody say, oh, no, white people, they didn't experience racial segregation. It was only black people when Martin Luther King had a march for us, or the Rose Park situation. It was more than that. It was almost all races.
And so, from that perspective, when we come back, I want you to sort of delve into what you consider to be some of the major elements and some of the major things that has to do with racial segregation and racial separation. I think you've already indicated in a real sense that it's general and all over the world and everywhere. And I think that I can say from some of the things that you've said on this program itself that you are now enlisting yourself into the war against racial separation and racial segregation. And of course, we're going to talk about that. And we'll be back with you following this very, very short commercial break. Thank you and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. The topic is racial separation or racial segregation, and Alana has given us a taste of some of the things that she believes will play a very, very significant part in terms of separating the races. Let's pick up from where we left off when we spoke with this last segment, Alana.
Well, for viewers just turning in, I am indeed Alana McLaughlin, born August 27, 2002. I'm 11 years old. I'm in 6th grade at John Early Museum Magnet Middle School. And in the previous segment, we talked about my background in education. Then we sort of got into racial segregation. Now, in the first segment, I stated that racial segregation was not only for African Americans, but it was all over. And most people don't really realize this, but it is always happening. It's still happening now. Like, for instance, once I went into a shop and I looked at an expensive piece of jewelry, a necklace, and then a sales lady, she looked at me and she said, "Do you really think you can afford that?" Because I mean, I wasn't all really done up that day. You know, my hair was crazy. I almost had on pajamas, leggings, and so basically, that still is racial separation, because a lot of people don't really realize that we have overcome that era and that it's no longer African Americans are poor, and I don't even like that mind frame that people use nowadays. Like President Obama. We did expect it, but we never knew that we would have a black president, because there are still people today who crazily think that, oh, black people are ghetto and that they're only good for making food or cleaning, and that they're all bald-headed and they all listen to rap music. I don't think I'm bald-headed. I'm fully black. I have an African-American mother and an African-American father. I don't think I'm bald-headed. I don't really like rap music. So that's a stereotype that I don't like. And then there's a stereotype about Caucasian people who they all drink Starbucks and they're all blonde to like Instagram, this social media website, don't even get me started. But that's crazy, and that's still people using this mind frame of they want to separate people. Like there's still people today who think Hispanics only eat tacos, or they're poor in the lower class. It's crazy. I mean, because have we not already overcome this? Did Martin Luther King not die for this? Like, he didn't die for this. He died so that we could all think we were all equal and that we could all be equal, because we are. He didn't die for African American boys, or any boy, for instance, to be walking down the street with their pants at their knees, and this stereotype of that African Americans are dangerous people who carry guns and knives, and all of them have weave. It's crazy, and I don't like it, because I actually, when I go down the street or when I see anything really, I always on TV it's depicted as African Americans are this way or that way. Then there are the African Americans who think that they're higher than people, and I just think that we're all equal. We're all one, basically. We're all made in the image of God. I don't think that she's higher than him or he's higher than her. The highest up would be God to me, and I may be wrong. but I don't think I am. And so basically, I just want us to all be equal because we are, and I wish people would see that. Like, I am sick and tired of going on Facebook and seeing someone say, I saw this girl, she got robbed today by this black girl, and just cut the black out of it, okay? Okay, that black part did not need to be added. Okay, she got robbed. Okay, that could happen anywhere. A Hispanic girl could have robbed her. A white girl could have robbed her. A black girl could have robbed her. What is it about African Americans that make people think that we're all so dangerous, that we all love fried chicken and Kool-Aid? And this is stuff that I have seen on the internet. I once read a blog post on Tumblr that said that African Americans' favorite food, that their favorite meal was Kool-Aid and fried chicken. That is the most stereotypical racist thing I have ever read in my life, besides reading some of these U.S. Supreme Court cases. And now back to now back to racial segregation, because I kind of got off topic. Now, see, as I said in the first segment, that the earliest sign of racial segregation was slavery. Now, if you're not familiar with slavery, slavery was when African Americans were enslaved by Caucasians or people of different races. I'm not going to single white people out, but then they were enslaved by different races and made to work and clean and cook because that other races thought they were higher up on a financial or on just a regular scale than us African Americans or us people of different races. And so they thought that, hey, we can abuse them or we can batter them and we can just kick them around for our own amusement, because at the time that was something funny. And now, see, when I look back at this, I still see people who think that we're in slavery days. I still see people in my own, not in my community, but like in my own little bubble of world, in the places I go, I still see people who think that black people aren't good for anything. And this is stuff that I see on social media, on Facebook, Vine and stuff. And then people want to make jokes out of it, and it's not funny. I mean, like, that would be like you going up to a Jewish person and drawing a swastika on your hand and saying, ha, 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 you're in the Holocaust. Like, that's not funny. You don't joke about that stuff, because that's just not funny, basically. And so I'm just trying to get the word out and just tell people that, hey, I mean, just let's move forward instead of going back into the past. I mean, yes, we have to learn about the past to make the future. Like, I wouldn't be preaching right now if I didn't know about Martin Luther King and his struggles and Malcolm X and all. But I still say, let's just not recreate the past, because not all of it was pretty beautiful. So how about we recreate a future where we all think we're equal and we love our neighbor, instead of, just hating people and thinking that we're better than people, because we're all equal. Nobody's better than anybody. We're equal. We're all people. We're all made with the same things. We almost all have hair and eyes. We're all humans. We all have souls, and we're people. We're just Homo sapiens.
And so, Lana, in a real sense, all of this information that you have in reference to racial separation and segregation, I know has to have some kind of factual basis behind it, and I think you've talked about some of the factual basis of the beginning of racial separation and et cetera and et cetera. And so when we deal with this final segment, I want you to deal with some of the court cases and some of the things that made for racial separation. So in spite of everything that you've said, there was a system that separated people constitutionally, and that's what we want to try to deal with when we come back, because I think that you've got some information that can give some credit to those individuals who have fought against some of the things that you're trying to fight against now. We can certainly appreciate that, but when we come back, let's look at some of the factual information that you have dealing with racial separation and racial segregation, and then we'll be able to, from that point on, analyze where we are going from this particular point, because I think everything that you've said is exciting and et cetera, but it really does not lay the foundation as to how we move forward. That information that you have will deal with that. And we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Thank you and welcome back to the final segment of the show for today. The topic is racial separation or racial segregation, and Lana has given us quite a bit of information in reference to her attitude toward equality and her attitude toward the separation of the races. But Lana, let's look at it a little deeper in terms of some of the other information that you have.
Now, in the previous segments, I did say that I was Alana McLaughlin. I am Alana McLaughlin. I am 11 years old, and I go to John Early Middle School. Now, then that was the first segment of background education. Now, in the second segment, I talked about how my views on racial segregation and racial separation, you know, the bus boycotts and Rosa Parks' situation, and Dr. King and how he marched for us and Malcolm X. Now, this last segment, I want to get down to a more of a factual basis because in the previous episodes, I have given more of a commentary basis. Now, let's talk about board versus education. Now, I think that the majority of African Americans are familiar with this U.S. Supreme Court case. Now, but if you're not, I'll give you a little basis on it. The Brown versus the Board of Education was a case that basically
Thank you and welcome back to the final segment of the show for today. The topic is racial separation or racial segregation, and the guest is Alana McLaughlin. Alana has given us some information in reference to some of the things that she believed to be important in her own personal life, and I think she will talk about some of the factual information in reference to separation and segregation. Let's talk about it from that perspective, Alana.
As Dr. Haney already stated, my name is Alana McLaughlin. I am 11 years old, and I go to John Early Middle School. Now, in these past segments, I've given more of a commentary based on like my opinion on and how I feel and how I'm tied into it. But now I want to get down to more of a factual basis. Now, let's talk about the Brown versus Board of Education U.S. Supreme Court case. Now, I think the majority of African Americans are familiar with this case, but if you're not, I'll give you a little basis on it. The Brown versus Board of Education case was basically 1/3 of how we got integrated schools. Now, integrated schools are schools that have multiple races in it. Before, we would have just a Caucasian school or an African American school or this or that. But then the Brown versus Board of Education case basically said, hey, what's wrong with having integrated schools? I mean, because we already see African American kids who have Caucasian friends. Martin Luther King, for instance, he had a Caucasian friend, but then he was forced to stop meeting with his friend because his parents thought he was in danger of a Klan incident because he was friends with a Caucasian boy and he was African American. Now, see, integrated schools, basically. If you're familiar with like the Little Rock Nine, then you should know a lot about it, but then let me talk about the Little Rock Nine. The Little Rock Nine were a group of 9 students who went to Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas, who basically said, you know what, they were basically the first people to really join in with the Integrated Schools Act. And so that's basically how we got integrated schools. Now, Brown versus Education, as I've previously stated, said that, you know, we need integrated schools. There's nothing wrong with it. And that's basically almost like how we got segregation ended, but then the Brown versus Board of Education case focused more on school and education, as segregation focused more on just daily life and how you would act if you went out to eat, or bus boycotts and things like that. Now, another famous case is the Plessy versus Ferguson U.S. Supreme Court case of 1898. Now, on June 7, 1892, Homer A. Plessy was removed from the East Louisiana Railroad train and arrested by Detective C.C. Kane at the corner of Royal and Press Street for civil disobedience and violating the 1890 Louisiana Separate Car Act that separated railroad passengers by race. This soon inspired the Plessy versus Ferguson U.S. Supreme Court case, which stated that the state law, which required East Louisiana railroads to segregate trains, had denied him his rights under the 13th and 14th Amendments of the United States Constitution. Now, if you're not familiar with the Constitution, I suggest you look that up. But because, see, I'm just going to jump right into it. Basically, this case was talking about Homer Adolph Plessy versus John H. Ferguson. Now, Homer A. Plessy, as I previously stated, was taken off a East Louisiana railroad car and arrested for civil disobedience because he apparently violated the 1890 Louisiana Railroad Car Act. Now, see, basically, the people who sold him his ticket sold him the ticket for a whites-only car, knowing his race. So basically, they set him up to fall. So personally, I think that that he was not at fault for anything because he was not aware that he had a whites-only ticket until he got on the bus, and then Detective C.C. Kane came up and said, "You're under arrest for civil disobedience." Then he finally went, "Oh, they sold me a ticket for the whites-only car when I'm obviously African American." Now, see, thankfully, when they took this to the U.S. Supreme Court, Homer A. Plessy was not charged, as they previously stated he would be, but he finally understood how they basically tormented and bullied him because of the fact that he was African American. Now, see, this also ties in with bullying, which has expanded to modern day cyberbullying, which is bullying with, electronics like this iPhone or a computer and such. And so basically, that's one of the earliest instances on record of the U.S. Supreme Court case that basically shows that he was bullied. And so Homer Adolph Plessy was basically he got to live his life after this. He got to move forward, basically, and that's what I want to do in life. I want us African Americans, us Europeans, Germans, Italians, Creoles. I want us to move forward. Because I know that there will always be a place, and we'll always have to look back and say, hey, we were in slavery and that we were in the Jim Crow era. But then I want us to move forward from that. I want us to make an era where we get to teach our children not to go around with their pants hanging at their knees or to do this to make a living. But I want us generation, because we're going to be the future leaders. My generation, we're going to be the people who kids have to look up and I look up to, and I don't want the future kids of the world to look up and say, hey, I want to be like this. I want to have a body full of tattoos. I want to curse out everybody in my path, and I want to dress like this, because I want a generation of classy, sophisticated people. And I'm not just saying that African Americans are saying that, oh, we should do this and do that. It's anybody. I want us to have a race of people who can be leaders, not people who other people look at and say, I don't even want my child around that. I don't want my child to be around to see this, because I want a generation where people can say, oh, I'm just so glad I raised my child like this. I don't want a generation of, look at that hooligan robbing a store. And I don't want a generation of stereotypes. Now, if you're not familiar with stereotypes, you probably already know one, like the black people only eat fried chicken and drink Kool-Aid stereotype. Those are types of stereotypes where people think that a race does this, but really we don't. I mean, not all African Americans like fried chicken or Kool-Aid. Not all African Americans dress like this or listen to that, because we're all unique. I mean, we're the same skin color, we're all Homo sapiens, but we have different personalities because we're all different. But then we're all the same in a from a big view of it, we're all the same, but then from a little view, if you look at every little aspect, we're all different.
And so Lana, if looking at the Brown versus the Board of Education and Plessy versus Ferguson, you were able to bring some foundation in reference to separation of the races and et cetera. But in spite of all of that, you still believe that it is the destiny of mankind to come together and everybody's supposed to be able to love one another and accept. Now, how does this leadership conference that you're getting ready to attend, how does that fit into your perceptions in terms of
what Dr. Hand is referencing to is the Junior National Young Leaders Conference. And that is a conference that I was nominated to attend and that I'm going to attend this June of 2014, this summer. Basically, the Junior National Young Leaders Conference is basically where just, academically achieving kids and smart kids and just kids who have special gifts like encore students come together, and then we don't all just sit around a table for a whole week, and this is a week thing. We go around Washington, D.C. and learn about this as our living classroom, because we get to learn about our different races and our triumphs and all this and our and just all these beautiful things, and it gets to really inspire who we are. And I'm glad that this has been established, because this is really inspiring kids to move forward instead of just being how they see on TV or on BET. It's inspiring them to be themselves and to be a future leader.
Well, Lana, do you think that many children, young people your age, understand what you were talking about in terms of separation and segregation and et cetera? And if not, what would you do and what should we do in order to make sure that they have a knowledge of some of the things you're talking about?
I don't. I mean, because I can't go down the street and be preaching all this and have a lot of kids say, oh my gosh, I understand how you feel. The majority of them would look at me like I was crazy and say, are you some old lady trapped in a little girl's body? But really, the reason I'm on here is to just get the word out, to basically spread to kids my age and to people your age and to people everybody's age that, hey, I mean, if I'm a kid doing this, then you can be so-and-so doing this, because this is possible. And you know what? I want to be a future leader, and so I'm trying to mold other smaller kids or maybe even bigger people to be future leaders with me.
Okay, very good. And Lana, let me say over the last 15 or 20 seconds that we have here that we certainly appreciate that information, and we encourage you and encourage others to continue your thought in reference to this. And of course, we'll be back with our audience next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning. Thank you and welcome to the show today. The topic today is from school to prison, breaking the pipeline. And we have with us to talk about the topic from school to prisons and breaking the pipeline, Pastor K. Walker. And Pastor K. Walker has with him today Ms. Rashida Fatuga and Ms. Sharika Hughes, both individuals that play a very, very significant role in terms of the topic that we are talking about today. And so, Pastor Walker, let's start off by having you, as well as Ms. Hughes and Ms. Fatuga, give us some information about your background, your education, and some of your experiences, and then we'll be able to get into the topic, perhaps by the second part of this show, dealing with the efforts from school to a prison and how we might break that pipeline. Let's start off with you.
Okay, Dr. Henry, first of all, let me thank you for allowing us the opportunity to come on your show and to share some information. I think it's going to be of vital importance to your listening audience. My name is Pastor Kelvin Walker. I pastor the Hands of God Christian Church. We're located in East Nashville on North 2nd Street. I was born and raised right here in Nashville, Tennessee, attended the public schools of Tennessee, and amazingly enough, I thought about it on the way over here to the studio here, Dr. Haney, how that, I don't know how long this prison to school to prison pipeline has been in place, but I know back in the 70s that I was kicked out of all the metropolitan Nashville, Davidson County public schools for extortion. And I recall the principal telling me in my first year of high school, you know, that Mr. Walker, your reputation precedes you, and the first thing I did, I got kicked out of the school system totally. And of course I fell into that trap, ended up in prison on drugs and all the whole 9 yards. So, but I'm here today because this is an important issue, and I brought a couple of guests with me, and I just want to kind of yield to them so that they can talk about it.
Okay. Well, Ms. Fatuga, why don't you give us some information about your background, education, and some of the things that were important in your life, and we will follow that with Ms. Hughes, giving us basically the same kind of information, and then we'll be able to go into this second segment dealing with the topic from school to a prison.
Okay, thank you also for having us on the show today. My name is Rashida Fatuga, and I'm the founder of Gideon's Army, Grassroots Army for Children, and we are a grassroots organization that's youth-led and focused on dismantling the school-to-prison pipeline in Nashville, Tennessee.
Very good. And Ms. Hughes?
Well, my name is Sharika Hughes, and I'm a student at the Academy of Oconqueror. This is my senior year, and I'm part of the Get Against Army nonprofit program for the Peace Project, help supporting youth in school.
And so you're part, in a real sense, part of the program that Ms. Fatuga is talking about. Is that your?
Yes, sir. I'm over the youth in school.
Pastor Walker, let's look at this idea of from school to prison, and I think that there are a large number of young people, many African American youth certainly, who fall into that trap, into that category. What can we say about that?
You know, Dr. Haney, you know me, I'm one that always believe that our government don't always have our best interests at heart. And especially when it comes to the young African American male, and especially the young African American male, in terms of wanting us to have the education that they say that they want us to have, but at the same time creating all types of systems and obstacles and roadblocks that would deter us from acquiring that education. And in our school system, and I think a lot of people are not aware of a lot of the things that take place in our school system that are systematically designed to stop our people from being educated. And that's why we're here today, to talk about these things and to really make the public aware so that we can come together and effectively bust up this school to prison pipeline, because they're identifying our young children at an early age, and they're shuffling them through. And then when you couple that with the privatization of prisons here in the United States of America, it's a deadly situation. It's a deadly poison that's in our society right now. There has to be, we have to recognize it, and then not only do we have to recognize it, but we have to stand up and challenge it and fight against it and eradicate it out of our school systems.
Let's see, Ms. Fatuga, now you've established, we've got about a minute before the end of this segment, but you've established this organization, and make some statements about this organization before we end this segment for today, and then we'll come back and we'll pick up with Ms. Hughes. But give some statements in reference to this organization that you've established.
Okay, well, Gideon's Army is working on a campaign to stop the school to prison pipeline. And what we're doing is looking at the systemic issues in our public school system judicial courts, and then also just how our kids are handled as far as policing is concerned. That's our focus specifically for this year.
And so you think that you've got a good program that can, in a real sense, at least touch this whole problem of from school to prison, and that's why you wanted to bring Ms. Hughes with you today, and she will be able, when we come back, to give us some information in reference to her journey into this program. And we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Thank you, and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. We're talking to Pastor Walker, Ms. Fatuga, and Ms. Hughes in reference to from school to prison, breaking the pipeline. Pastor Walker, I think that we've talked about the revolving door situation for a long time, but now I think the idea here is from school to prison, and then you go in prison, and then you come back and get involved in the revolving door.
Absolutely.
I think in a real sense. Ms. Hughes, let's have you to talk about your journey to this organization that has been established by Ms. Fatuga, and how you feel that it has helped you and those that you work with or those around you.
Okay, well, I got involved in Get Against Army through my brother, which makes me passionate about it. He was murdered in 2011. He was a very troubled student, and he didn't have the opportunity to experience the things I got to experience. I was very different. I was passionate about school. I always wanted to get out, so I did everything positive that I could think of with the help of others to just get out of the neighborhoods I was in, the people who were involved with it. And I had experienced something my junior year of high school, which I've never been in trouble. And soon I got in trouble. It was like everyone who helped me and supported me to be different and to experience different things, they dropped me. And I wasn't able to go to Nashville Public School anymore, and I was put in an alternative school, so it's like I was stereotyped, like I was a bad student, but I wasn't. I was good. I did everything from the beginning to prove to everyone that I was different, and everyone knew that. So when Get Against Army came about with Rashida Fatuga, and I knew there was other students out there who were being pushed out of school, who it was their first offense, but it was zero tolerance in school, they didn't get a chance to express their feelings or how they felt, and when they fought about how they felt and how they got in the situation, they were just looked down upon because it didn't matter, because they didn't have a voice. So joining with Get Against Army, I've been able to meet people from Vanderbilt, Fisk University, TSU, so it's just like a huge diversity of people who've got in trouble, different race, it really didn't matter. And we just all got to come together and just express our experience of like how Get Against Army would help us, or how we could help other students who've been pushed out of school. And that's really just been our main goal, of helping youth stay in school, staying positive, being supportive, on helping them just experience different things without being stereotyped.
So Ms. Fatuga, you established this organization, Get Against Army. Well, now, what prompted you, what motivated you to think of an organization like this, and tell us something about the successes that you've had in reference to this organization?
Okay, well, my motivation is, number one, I was a Metro public school teacher for 7 years. I taught in the Edge Hill community, and I loved being in the classroom. But I did see, as my students got older, you know, just keeping in touch with them over the years, they ended up being pushed out of schools. They didn't love school like they used to, incarcerated, murdered. All of these things are happening to my babies, and it came a point in time in looking for other leaders to step up and to do something. And I realized that a lot of people have really great intentions but don't understand community organizing or haven't really done the research to know and understand what really can dismantle the prison pipeline by striking at the roots, not just dealing with little symptoms, putting out fires here and there, but what can we do to cut it at its root. And that's been really the goal and the focus that we've had. We're a relatively young organization, but we've done a lot. We've had a lot of different successes, and success, of course, is relative, but we've been able to build a solid base of young people at a lot of schools to do trainings. We launched the Peace Project, which is a youth-led initiative to stop violence against youth, which has been really powerful because we train the youth and then the youth train each other. And so they are empowered and can see also how they have control, more control over their environments and over their situations than a lot of times they feel. The system, it's big, and it can also seem very overwhelming and like we can't do anything to, I don't want to say fight the system, but to correct the wrongs within the system, or to restructure the system so that everything and everyone functions properly within it. But it's actually really doable if we're strategic enough. I think another big success is that we understand, and we've done a lot of research, so that we're very strategic with everything we do. And so it won't be just a lot of feel-good moments and a lot of just things based off of emotion. We're doing things that really work.
And so, Pastor Walker, in a real sense, you as well as they have identified this as one of the real questions that we have dealing with our young people today, this whole idea of incarceration and prison to from school to prison and et cetera.
Oh, absolutely, Dr. Haney. When you listen to Ms. Hughes' statement, her story over there, you understand here you got a young lady that's determined to go to school, do what's necessary to do the right things and make the grades and deliberately being different and not fitting into a certain mold, and then to have one thing comes up and then because of the zero tolerance, to just be pushed completely out of the system into a whole negative environment, into an alternative school section where a lot of the students in those sections, some of them are trouble students, but to put her in that environment, and that's to just curtail, what she's doing. So she could have easily taken that and just given up and went into another direction, caught up in drugs, alcohol, and all types of aberrant behaviors because of that. It's just by the grace of God that she had the will enough to continue to pursue what she had already predestined in her mind to accomplish. And otherwise, she would have fell victim to that trap. And that's what we need to talk about, identify that trap. What is that school to prison pipeline? How does it work? When do they identify? What do they do to determine what prison is going to be built in the future in these communities and stuff like that?
And so in a real sense, what we're doing here is trying to break that, as you indicated, break the pipeline from there. And the same thing that happens after the pipeline has put them in prison. They go to prison without any kind of reformation or anything and come back, and then they're back to prison again. And so this is really the front end, in a real sense, of this revolving door, in a real sense.
Absolutely, because, you're looking at our children now, because of the privatization of prison in America, you're looking at children as commodities, So this is how do we make money off of these students? And of course, we know slavery is still legal in the prison system. So if I can get this free labor, and if I can find a way to target it, then I can guarantee.
Very good. And of course, we're going to be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Thank you and welcome back to the final segment of the show for today. We're talking to Pastor Walker, Ms. Fatuga, and Ms. Hughes in reference to from school to prison. The pipeline is being broken here today in terms of the information that we're receiving about some of the events that eventually will take young people into prisons, even out of the school system. And of course, Ms. Hughes, let's see if we can pick up with you, because I think that you mentioned something that was very revealing in terms of how your life simply changed and whatever. And so if you don't mind, let's talk about that for a few minutes and have Ms. Fatuga to sort of break in, I mean, to bring to some kind of resolution in terms of why she feels that what she's doing has helped you.
Okay, well, as I said, my brother was murdered in 2011, and he had always had trouble with schooling. Like, the teachers didn't want him in the class. He wasn't motivated to go because he knew that he wasn't wanted. So